I mean, you spend 12 hours a day studying chess and you prepare a line to the very end. Then I come out with a really good line that I thought was great prep, and not only do I not get anything, but Anish literally knows the whole line all the way to move 30. So let's go to the third game, which I had against none other than Pistol Peter Svidler himself, third round of the event. Now, one great thing is the third round already of this event, I had an idea of what Peter was playing, because in the first round he did not play his patented Grunfeld defense. He decided to switch it up and play the Slav. So I already had some idea that this was coming. So I played d4, d5, c4, c6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3 takes a4, e6. Now in round one of the event, Peter played this against he played it against, was it Vichy? I don't remember. In round one of the candidates in 2016, he had already played the system, so I kind of knew that it would be coming. So I play e3 here, c5, I take, he goes knight c6, and we actually sort of transpose into something that's akin to a Queen's Gambit accepted here. So now I castle, c takes d4 is played, takes bishop e7. Now one thing that I will add about this game, just going back to the opening to give you guys an idea of why people change the openings up so much, is that, for example, this idea with e6 that Peter played, he spent months working on this before the event. Now for example, if players knew before the event for a couple of months that he was going to be playing the system, everybody would be going gung-ho on this e3 move, but also playing this very sharp e4 line, was bishop b4 e5, or even bishop b4 bishop g5, and people would spend hours and hours over weeks looking at this. But because he switched up during the event, players didn't have months to sort of queue up and look at this specific line. So I play e3, c5 takes, knight c6 castles, takes is played, bishop e7. Now I play queen e2 here, logical move. Black cannot grab the pawn here because after takes, there is knight to b5 here, attacking the queen. If you go like queen c5 here, I think bishop e3 or even bishop f4, both these moves are very aggressive and very dangerous for black. And if you go queen b6 here, now I think a5, queen c6 runs into knight a7 with bishop b5 winning the queen. And if you go queen d8 here, again, I think bishop f4, or maybe even rook d1. Many different ways to play this. Bishop f4 and rook d1 both look very, very attractive, but let's just say bishop f4, and I think black's in a lot of trouble. So he doesn't take the pawn, instead he castles. I go rook d1 here, knight b4, bishop g5, h6. All this was prepped, by the way. I take, and now I go knight e4, b6, knight to e5, and now he plays bishop h4, which, by the way, again, random move, but as I said before, all preparation up to this point being played by both of us. So bishop h4, I play g3 here, bishop to e7, and now I go knight to c3. So I play knight to c3, and now after knight c3, Peter goes bishop f6, and I play this move d5. Again, all of this is relatively I mean, nowadays it's obviously known, but at the time this was not known, and this was still all preparation. Goes queen c7, d6, queen c5, knight g4, takes knight c6, and this is where I made a blunder. So up to this point, this was all preparation. I looked at this, and here I believe I played the move rook a b1, which is not the move that I looked at. I'm pretty sure. Let me double check. Was it rook a b1? One second. Oh no, sorry, this was still prep. No, rook a b1 was still prep. Rook a b1, a6 is played, and now I play d7, bishop b7, and this is where was it this position? Bishop d3, rook f d8. I'm looking at the computer lines because somewhere in here it's right around this point where I made a mistake. I don't want to open chess base to look specifically, but somewhere around here I think I made a mistake. I don't know if it was queen e4 or was it queen h7. Okay, so assuming my memory is not failing me, up to this point I believe it was all prep, and now I think this king f8 move was not a move I had looked at, and I blundered with queen h7 because the eval goes down, right? Yeah, okay, so queen h7 was a mistake. So I don't remember if queen e4 was the last move I prep, or if this was the spot where I ended everything. But right around here after king f8, after basically blitzing out all of these moves, I didn't know what the next move was. And in this position, I blunder with queen h7. Now, the correct move here is the very obvious move, bishop to e2, because you just guard the pawn and you don't worry about trying to attack on the king's side. Again, very kind of random that this is the best move, but this is also why it's very, very difficult, and you have to be very careful when you pick your lines in terms of like trusting computer evaluations and looking at them, because over the board I don't think bishop e2 is a logical move for anybody to find here. You blitzed out 25 moves here. You know that you're better by about 0.5 roughly. I think I remember an evaluation around there, and you're obviously here looking for the logical move. Like you're thinking, okay, black gets knight a5, queen c6, for example. Say something like this. Like you worry that there's maybe queen c6. You worry there's maybe something like bishop d5 and rook d7, something like this. Even d7 is a little bit weak, and so you feel like there's a lot of danger. And as a human, you feel like you need to do something to move forward. You need to do something to keep pushing ahead here. That's what you feel like you need to do. So you feel like you need to keep pushing ahead here. But how can you really do that? So to me, I thought, well, I mean, bishop e2 doesn't make sense. I don't even know if I considered it at the time. I doubt I did. And I thought queen h7 looks like the right move. You're just going in for the kill. Queen h8, hit the pawn on g7, and it all looks very, very scary for black. However, after queen h7, black can just play this very strange looking move, pawn to h5, and white's in a lot of trouble here. Oh, you're asking why f5 doesn't work? F5 doesn't work here after bishop e2 because after takes bishop c4, you're getting killed on the diagonal. That's the reason. So I go queen h7, h5, knight e3 here. Knight to e5 is played by Peter. I go bishop e4. He trades, and now after rook a7, just like that, I'm completely lost. Maybe lost is too strong of a word, but I'm in a lot of trouble because now I have no attack. The king is very safe. Even if I go queen h7, I mean, there are probably quite a few ways you can play this. I don't know if rook d7, maybe knight g6 even to stop the check, but black is much better here. So just like that, because of h5, the whole thing is gone. One wrong move, and suddenly I'm in a lot of trouble, and objectively I should lose this game. So I go here, bishop e4 trade, rook a7, I go knight d5 here, trying to complicate matters, hoping for a queen h7, hoping to hit the pawn. He takes, I can take, and now again h5 and d5 are weak, so white's fine. And if say knight d7, I have knight takes b6 again with this pin. Looks completely fine for white. So I play knight d5, but now he just goes knight g4. Knight is guarded by the pawn. He also hits f2, and h2 is checkmate. I go knight e3. He goes knight f6, queen b4, trade, and now he just takes on d7. And after I take on b6, he goes takes, king e7, rook d4, a5, and the smoke is really cleared here. We've reached an end game. But the problem for white is that white has two weaknesses. The pawn on a4 is weak, and the pawn on c3 is weak. Both these weaknesses are hard to defend. And black can also, again, just go rook c7. a5 is not weak because knight c4 you just take. Actually, you do take, or no, wait. Maybe this works. Does this work? Takes? I guess you have king f6 here. And if knight c6, maybe this is enough for a draw because rook c7 you can trade. Yeah, this is a draw, so maybe it's enough for a draw. So maybe I should have gone knight c4 here. Although, or actually, sorry, I did play knight c4. Knight d5 is played. However, again, keeping knights on the board, as I said before, or not as I said, but as you guys could tell, the rook and pawn endgames are generally drawn. So in order to try to play for a win here as black, you do want to try to keep more pieces on the board. So I go rook d3, rook c7 takes, and now he goes knight c3, and now I'm going to end up in a very unhappy endgame here because I can't go rook d4 to guard the pawn because then there's knight e2 at the fork, and so I'm going to end up losing this pawn at a4, and black is going to have a 4 versus 3 on the king side. So I go king g2 takes, rook a3, play knight b3, g5, knight d2. Again, very poorly played by me here, by the way. Very, very poorly played. I should have gone h4 here to fix the pawn structure, and after knight e4 just go rook a2 here. And again, I mean, black is still up a pawn, and he's going to try to win for the rest of the game, but I don't think that I should lose this position. But again, as I said with the previous game, sort of my mindset, at this point already, I was in a very bad frame of mind because don't forget, I had lost the second game. So I had lost the previous game, so I was already not in a good mood. But then to have to try and defend a position like this after losing that, I was really in bad shape. So I played knight b3, which is just a bad move because now after g5, g4, or h4, black is definitely going to have much better chances than he would if the pawn structure is fixed like this. So I go here, g5, knight d2, f5, I play h3 here, king f6, and now I go g4. Idea behind g4 again is that if black trades, black takes the extra pawn here, I can play rook c3, and then I have knight e4 with the fork, the king, and the rook. Humans get emotional, but computers are objective. Yeah, totally. So I played g4, which is also a bad move because now, speaking of themes, now the knife is going to f4 where it's protected by the pawn on g5. He could play rook a7 if you don't go knight b3. No, actually he can't, because if he goes rook a7, I have knight c6 with a clean fork, which is just winning. so he can't do that. So anyway, back to the game. After g4 he goes knight d5. I takes with the king, and again, very, very unpleasant position. There's knight f4 and I can't really do anything about it. So I go knight f1, goes check. I go here, rook c1, knight e3. I won't go too in depth into this, but at any rate, we eventually reach this end game here with 3 versus 2. Now what's ironic about this end game is that in a later round I would end up with this exact same end game with colors flipped. However, in that one I would make a fateful blunder and lose, whereas in this one I would be able to draw. So I go rook a5, rook e2, h4, f3. I go here, rook f2. Now I think f3 was a mistake. I thought king f5 was maybe a better try with the idea of king g4. I lost up a pawn. No, I mean I had the black pieces down a pawn. I had black and I had 2 pawns. My opponent was white and had 3 pawns, but it was the exact same pawn structure. So I go h4, he plays f3, which is kind of a fairly serious mistake. I think actually here already, if Peter had gone king f5, it would have been very difficult for me to draw, because now I play h4 here. I think after f3 and king g4, king h3, like rook a8 here, let's say here, I think takes, black's just winning, and so I can't really go rook a8. And if I go rook a4, e4, I mean this starts to get very, actually computer says -7, by the way, as you guys can see from the bar, so it's completely lost. So king f5 would have been very tricky, whereas now after king f5 I believe that I can just go f3 here, and now the king has no entry. And if we go back here after king f5, f3, I think now king g5 and king h4 with the idea of king g3 is actually just winning. Maybe not winning, computer says -1, but very, very tricky and close to winning for black. So at any rate, he plays rook e2, h4, has to go f3 to stop me from doing it. And now after king h2, it's just an easy draw. If black takes on f2, I have king g3, attacking the rook and both pawns here. Black can't guard everything. And after say king f5, king g3, can't go e4 because that puts the king in check. If king e4, just rook a4 and I take on f3, and so he just takes. So after f3, king h2, or wait, no, did I not do that? No, sorry, after f3 I go king h2, he does take, king g3, rook e2 takes, rook e1, king, rook a8, and it's just a very easy draw. If king f5, I can just go check, king g6 check, and I just keep the king always close to the pawn, and so black can't really do a whole lot here. So I go rook a8, rook h1, I go king e4, takes, king e5, goes rook b4. Also, kind of looking back on this one too, I kind of wonder why I played rook a8 here, because unless I'm insane here, isn't rook a6 just an easy draw? King f5, rook h6. Yeah, this is just an easy draw. Easy draw here. Yeah, so this is also another example, you guys, where when I talk about a turn, it's very different, because I think in any other event I probably would have played this one and drawn the game easily, whereas what I did in the game, it is drawing. But just to be clear, if we reach this position, this is actually lost for white, because now there's king h4 and king h3. I think it's lost. Isn't this lost? Wait, why is it saying zeros? Oh, I can go rook a8. Maybe it's still, okay, it's still a draw. Still a draw, but the point is it's very dangerous, because in rook and pawn endgames, the king gets cut off like this. There are a lot of endgames where you're losing. Like this. So again, I picked the one that's a draw, but it's a very fine line here. But fortunately the king's on g6, so I can just check, and I can go here, king f5, and we agree to a draw here, because after h4 I can just go check. If king h5, I just check, and after king h7, I think rook g4 is probably the cleanest way to draw. And after takes, of course, I just win the pawn. And if he plays rook b5, I go king f4, rook h5, and I can just go rook g2, h3, rook h2, and then king g3, and we swap everything off here, and the game ends in a draw. So this was round 3 with the white pieces. It was a draw. So as I said, I drew the first game, lost the second game, drew the third game. So now fortunately, after that loss to Sergey, I had double whites. So in round 4 I played against Anish Giri. Let me put it on the right game. So round 4 I played with the white piece against Anish Giri. So I played d4, d5, c4, c6, knight c3, knight f6, e3. Now this was something, again, I had prepared. I think also in this game, I don't remember why I switched up the order, although I think I also thought Anish might take on c4, so I decided to go knight c3, e3 rather than the more traditional order with knight f3, knight f6, e3 for whatever reason. So I go here, knight f6, I play e3, e6, knight f3, and we transpose back into the Moran. Now, because I had so much time to prepare before the event, I did actually prepare for the specific variation. I played queen c2, bishop d6, and now I played bishop e2. So here Anish castles, I castle, and he takes on c4, take, b5, and now I played bishop e2. Now once again, if you think about it, you go back to the old days, 2016, a lot of the theory that now exists did not exist at the time, so it was still relatively new. I would not new, but it was still kind of fresh. So bishop e7 is played. I go e4, e5, I take, and now I played knight d4. Now again, at this point, I think there have been a lot of games that have been played with this line, but at the time it wasn't super common. Anish, however, plays knight g4 here. I go g3, and now unfortunately for me, Anish was very well prepared and he played rook e8. What I was sort of hoping for when I played this during the game was I was hoping for the more human or logical idea, which is of course bishop takes g3, takes, and queen takes d4, because actually while black is up a pawn here, after queen to d1, trade rook d1, white has the bishop pair here, and the knights are a little bit iffy. Additionally, the pawn chain is not all that great. If you ever push, I can go here and go to c5. You can't really go here because then you would lose the pawn potentially, and your knights are getting kicked by like f3 here. Say you play like rook e8, f3, knight e5. I mean, just like bishop e3. Black is okay here, but with the two bishops and an inability to start pushing these queenside pawns, there are good chances. So instead, Anish of course plays this move rook e8. Now I go knight to f5, and unfortunately for me, Anish is still perfectly prepared, and he plays bishop c5 here. I go bishop f4, and again, this position for a human is not very obvious in terms of what's going on. Obviously, knights are a little bit loose on f6 and g4. Be careful about knight d6 and so forth. But Anish goes queen b6, which is still the correct move. I play king g2 here. Again, all this is still preparation, hoping that Anish is not ready. And unfortunately here, Anish is still prepared, and he plays the best move, which is this move g6 here. I definitely remember that after moves like bishop f2 or knight f2, white has very good chances here. There's like e5, knight d7, and I don't remember what it was. Oh, there's b4 here to overload the queen and the bishop, winning the knight, and the game goes on, and white definitely has chances here. And bishop f2 I think is also just bad because I think you trade, and do you just take? Oh, computer says queen e2 is just winning here because h5 you have h3, and now everything's overloaded once again. But Anish of course just plays g6 instantly here. So he plays g6 right away. I go h3, and now he plays knight e5, another move that I believe is absolutely correct. I know the bar, it's funny looking at this now, the bar actually, it's funny that the weak engine now doesn't really understand how this is actually nothing for white. So it says this is better for white, but it's actually not, because this is the exact main line of what we played. So he goes knight e5, I go knight h6 check, king g7, play bishop g5, idea to play f4, attack with f5 or e5. Anish goes bishop d4. Now I take, he takes, I go f4, and now he goes knight c4 here, and you're gonna see the bar is actually wrong, because, and the reason this was so annoying is I also suspect that when I was looking at this in 2016, I do think somewhere, yeah, see now it says black is better. Somewhere around here, I think I got very optimistic because I thought this was very, very good for white. I mean, the bar says it's good, the computer says it's good, there's f4, there's e5. It feels really scary for black. But Anish of course is perfectly prepared. He played this, goes knight c4 here, and now I take, and now I play f5, and even here Anish is still perfectly prepared and plays this very annoying move c5. What I was hoping for here was that he would play something like king g7, because I think now after fg6 here takes, there's some trick. Is it knight a4? I remember there was some trick like knight a4 and maybe check and rook d1. Wow. And computer gives white an edge because there's like a queen c1 idea. The king is very loose here, even though black is up a piece here, so there definitely are still chances. But of course Anish just blitzed out c5 here, and so now when I take, he can just take with the king, and the problem is now the diagonal is open towards g2 here, so there isn't really a whole lot that I can do in this position other than play what I did in the game, which is knight f7, goes rook f8, play knight d5. Anish takes on b2. I go check, king g7, knight f5, and he just goes king g6, and we make an unfortunate repetition here. Black does not take the knight because then after takes, it's actually check on the king, and I can capture the queen because there's no bishop guarding. So we end up basically playing this out to a draw. Now this was very upsetting because think about the tournament situation. So obviously I lost the second game that I was very unhappy with to Karyakin, but then I had two games with pretty good preparation against Peter, where I then made a one move blunder, and this game against Anish where I had what I thought was a really good idea, and Anish literally knew the entire line out to move 30, even with the computer saying at various points with low depth that it's very bad for black. but Anish knew the whole line. He literally knew the whole thing all the way out. He knew to play c5 here, not king g7. Whereas if he had not looked at this line to the very end, I think there's a very good chance here Anish would have played a move like king g7 or g5, because the king looks suicidal to basically just walk into all these checks. But of course the computer doesn't care, and it just says, haha, you're stupid. Black is completely fine. How can you blitz c5 instead of king g7? I mean, you spend 12 hours a day studying chess and you prepare a line to the very end. Where's the fun in knowing everything? Oh, I mean, I'm not saying it's fun, but that's the reality of top level chess, and especially for a tournament like the Candidates, where players can prepare all the way out to like move 30 in various openings. So yeah, haha, you dumb. Exactly. So yeah, this game was very upsetting, because you think about it. I mean, especially this Svidler game, I draw this very tough end game where I'm down a pawn, have to struggle for like 5-6 hours, then I come out with a really good line that I thought was great prep, and not only do I not get anything, but Anish literally knows the whole line all the way to move 30. So this was the fourth game, which ended in a draw. I think this is gonna be the last game that I'm gonna go over today, because I don't want to do all 14 games, so that would be a little bit of overkill. But yeah, when we look at this game, it was very frustrating, because I felt like I had three games where I had great chances. Fabiano, okay, knight b5, not an easy move to play, but if I had played it, I would have had great winning chances. This game too, a really high quality idea, but Anish just happens to know it to move 30, and then I lose the game to Sergey in the middle. So very, very unfortunate to be in the situation. I also will add as the last little bit about this is why you need supercomputers though, because for example, we get to a position like that. Let's just get to this position. Computer was saying +3 right around here very briefly. Now of course the table is hashed, so it's going to say zeros, but when you get to a position like this and you're doing preparation, if you're using a weaker computer, it might take it 30 seconds to a minute to conclude that it's fine, whereas with a supercomputer it might say equal after 5 seconds. So it's going to take 30 seconds to a minute to say equal, and you're in a position like this, which is so far beyond theory that you just, I mean, it's very unlikely it's going to happen. If we're being honest, I mean, it's just not going to happen. Generally, you get to move 30, how likely is this position occurs on the board? Pretty unlikely. So you're probably not going to sit around and let a computer think for minutes or even up to half an hour on end in some of these positions, because you're so far out of the theoretical knowledge that it's just not practical, and it's probably not going to happen. But if you are using a supercomputer and you can reach the conclusion within say 5 to 10 seconds, or even quicker, or even if it's just a little bit slower than that, you might actually pay attention to it, because you're not gonna have to let it sit forever. So that's actually one of the other reasons that using supercomputers is really, really important when you're preparing for events like the Candidates or the World Championship.